Hi, everyone. Welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community weekly talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and our guest today is Gail Grycel. Gail is a cabinet maker and custom builder. She's also a musician. She shared her woodworking craft through workshops over the years, primarily for women, and she now teaches at the Hatch Space here in Brattleboro, as well as serving on their board. Gail has traveled widely and nomadically, always with a spirit of adventure, openness, and expansion. Welcome, Gail.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And we've got a bunch of things to talk about. You actually, in your early years, you were in Chicopee, Mass., which isn't that far away. And you got very into music at an early age.
I did. I started in second grade. Now, my father, coming from a very Polish background, thought, oh, she can play the accordion. How great is that? So I started with the accordion in second grade. And by junior high school, of course, it was very uncool, not a good instrument to be playing. So I turned to the piano, and then I picked up the oboe in high school and went on to study music. I mean, that was my main creative, direction. I ended up getting a music degree in performance in 1979 on the oboe.
Oh, and so that's what you studied in college.
Yes.
Music performance. That's interesting. Yeah. So that was your trajectory. You were planning on being a performer.
I did. I was in symphony orchestras, and taking auditions and doing that. And then in my mid-20s, realized that that life was not going to really be a happy one for me.
And why was that? What were your feelings about that?
Well, I was dating a trumpet player at the time who was actually playing with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And so I got pretty close to the life I wanted to have, in my dreams. Yes. And I could have saw through him the container that he had to put himself in to do that. I mean, he wouldn't pick up a screwdriver to tighten something because he didn't want to slip and hit his finger. He had a mouth made, so he could have it reconstructed if something happened to him. And I thought, that's not the life I want to live. I want to do anything I want to do and not have to be careful about every little thing.
Yes, right. So, and just going back to your early years again, your family supported you with the music.
They did. They loved the music part of it. They sort of had my brother and I each choose one direction. So, dance lessons were out, other things were out, but, music, and they said, yeah, absolutely great, right through. So.
Great. And did you start dancing at an early age as well? Because I know that you do a lot of dance.
I do a lot of dancing. No, I don't. Although I do have a great video of me about maybe 7 at a Christmas family gathering, twirling around the best. But I love to move, but it wasn't in the, nobody in my family danced. So really I picked up once I got out of college, and I ended up making friends who danced and kind of got, brought into that trajectory with them, and just fell in love. Folk dancing and swing dancing and all that stuff.
Oh, that's great. So very wide, very eclectic kinds of dance.
I do. And as I've traveled, I've been able to find it anywhere I go. From some honky tonk two-step in Texas to some Cajun and Zydeco in Louisiana to I dance Argentine tango. And there's a nice little community here in Brattleboro as well that dances tango.
Yeah. Yes, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the travel section of our show here. I love that. And so at some point, I'm not really sure when it was, but you something really changed in your life, deciding that you didn't want to do performance. And then what was your trajectory towards woodworking?
Well, yeah, so I realized that symphonic work was not going to be making me happy. I wanted a different life. So when I was 24, I'm sitting in therapy saying, well, now what do I do? I have no, this is what I've been training to do for a long time. But, synchronistically or serendipitously, whatever, I happened to chance upon a book about women carpenters at the same time. And I was just in awe, so I bought the book, I read it from cover to cover, and these women didn't already know how to do it. They learned, they wanted to build a little shack and someone showed them how to use a hammer, whatever it was. And I thought, wow, what must it feel like to actually build something, which is different than music. You can record music, but it's not the same as live music.
Right.
And, to have something tactile, something that you can still touch, at the end of the day, out of wood or something like that was a really huge thing. And I thought, wow, what that must be that, be that for me. So I that sat there for a couple of years until I was looking for some part-time work in Harvard, Massachusetts, where the little local newspaper, part-time help needed at cabinet shop, low pay, slave labor, no
Yeah.
benefits, bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I called them and said, what do you do? And I might be interested. And they hired me, and I fell in love with the work. And for so many reasons, the tactile part of it, but also just being able to work with my hands in a different way. And I also found, as creative people do, that your skill sets from one creative pursuit transfer. I was already making reeds with tools, for my oboe.
Uh-huh.
So, it was like, oh yeah, I already do this. I already do this in some form.
Yes.
Attention to detail, practice, skill
Mhm.
building.
Mhm.
And I just really love the work, and I love how it brought a certain empowerment to me personally.
So, Gail, you're working with these two gentlemen who you're basically apprenticing. You're in your 20s at this time?
I started
Yeah.
when I was
29. Uh-huh.
28.
28. Uh-huh. And you worked with them for a good amount of time.
About 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Went from part-time to full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were savvy enough to realize that the more I knew, the better an asset I would be for them.
Yeah,
And
right.
so, and because it was a small shop, they could feed me different things. So here, design this little thing for this client. We'll see how you do.
Uh-huh.
Or help you, figure out how to finish work and install work and the business aspect of it. And eventually I stopped getting raises, but I could use the shop for my own private clientele. And that was my transition into, my opening my own shop, basically.
Uh-huh.
Didn't have to go cold into that business world. I'd already been seeing it, doing it, trying it out with them that was, excellent. They were right away.
Yeah. And so you were learning all aspects of the trade, which is pretty cool, which you probably wouldn't have been able to do in a larger organization.
That's right. They would have had me, sanding or at a drill press or something the whole day.
Yes.
But because a little bit of everything, it was really great. And I got to be with them on job sites, so I got to understand how to go out into either a client's house, with other contractors, which was a whole education unto itself, being a woman, in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Going into these sort of good old boy men, going, wait a minute, are you like a sister of somebody or somebody's wife helping out today? Or, you guys that I work with going, oh, no, she's a cabinet maker for us, so it was really interesting to have to navigate that world too.
Yes, I was going to ask, and it sounds like they made it quite easy for you to be able to navigate.
They did while I was with them.
Uh-huh.
Once I got into my own, now I'm on my own. So, there's a lot of men saying, hey, where did you buy these cabinets? Or where did, can you really do it? Where's your boss? Or where's your whatever?
Right.
And sort of, there was an interesting trajectory there for me because I had the feminist fists up for a long time saying, how dare they think that I can't do this? Until I realized that, they're not just being jerks in some way. They really just don't have a different perspective. So I became, again, the educator. If I just show up and do my best work and do it without the fists up, and they have to see women differently on the job site. And so that's another turning point for me.
Definitely a turning point, and also a turning point in the whole culture during that time, 80s and 90s and into the turn of the century, having women more in places where they're not usually seen. Yeah. So that's wonderful that you were on the vanguard of that. It's pretty exciting. So you're in Boston, the Boston area. How did you get to Brattleboro?
I left Harvard, a little west of Boston, for a relationship in Marlow, New Hampshire, and he was a carpenter. And we had been seeing each other, we had met dancing and back and forth for 3 years. And then finally it made sense to make that move. And I invested a little bit of money. I worked really hard, invested some money in his house building project and helped with that. Couples go to movies, we built, right? And so I finally moved up there and it just didn't take for us. We were better actually commuting back and forth. So left there, I left with a chunk of money, and I actually came to West. I found my property in Westminster West. I had been I went on the Putney craft tour that particular year,
Mm-hmm.
and talked to all these craftspeople, and I thought, wow, this is a really creative. And so I bought my property here. I was on the Putney craft tour for many years,
Uh-huh.
and that brought me to the area. And I still played music around Boston. At that time, I was going back and forth and teaching in Vermont music as well. I was on adjunct faculty at Castleton State College when they were that for a while. I stopped playing the oboe in 2014 when I started traveling.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Do you miss it?
It's another bittersweet thing.
Yeah.
I've pulled my machines off and went, oh, okay, hey, I'm retiring from the woodworking cabinetry business. The
Right.
same thing happened with music in terms of oboe, but I play many things. So I will always have music in my life. I have a keyboard here, I play American flute. I'm learning the ukulele.
Uh-huh.
I can woodwind instruments.
Yeah.
And so it will always be there.
You started Twin Birch uh,
Wood-
Woodworking. So that was your company. So you were doing that. You were also, I believe, building a straw bale house for yourself at the same time.
I was. So
Yeah.
I left my Marlow, New Hampshire guy and thought, well, how long do I wait for someone else to build a house with, right? Going back to the women's carpentry book, where my question was, what would it feel like to build your own home?
Yeah.
And so I was 39 at that time and thought, how long do I wait? I've got this little chunk of money from that process.
Yeah.
I bought my property here in West. I thought, why don't I just build my own house? But I don't have a lot of funds. So I've never made a lot of money. So I got to do it myself. It's got to be owner builder friendly. I have friends who would love to help with that kind of process.
Oh.
And I got to the straw bale part of it because there was somebody in Brattleboro at that time who was building straw bale houses. He's no longer in the area, but I found an ad for him. So I picked his brain and said, okay, what is this? What is it about? I've heard about it, but I don't know. And so through my consultations with him, I decided I'm just going to go for it. And maybe I'll fail at this bigger project. Maybe it won't happen and I'll leave thinking, oh, at least I tried. But it just kept going and going and going. And it took me 18 years to build it. But of course I did it without a bank because, it's a little alternative. And they're like, oh, what's the with the straw thing?
Yeah.
So but still, it was an amazing process, even though it took that long. It was never meant to be that long. I thought 5 years, maybe.
Right. Well, as I know, straw bale is a completely different kind of endeavor, and we are looking at you in your straw bale house right now, as a matter of fact.
All's here.
Yep.
Bees for
Yep.
my property.
Yep. It looks beautiful. So during this time, the Twin Birch was happening, right? You were doing your business, you were building a house, and you were teaching mainly women at that time. And I know that one of the things that you talked about were these, I think, questions that you held. Can I do this? Can I do this on my own? And can I share my craft? And I think you've spoken to, I think, all of those things, but taking that into teaching, how was that for you?
Well, I had been teaching a long time music in some form.
Mm-hmm.
And of teaching women woodworking is that I was doing some production work while I was still living in Harvard before I moved to New Hampshire. And I had a friend of mine who I was hiring one evening a week to come and just help me do some of the more grunt work. And she's a math teacher at Tufts University. And she at one point said, have you ever thought about teaching women? Because you make this so accessible to me as a non-woodworker. I bet women would learn from a woman. And I thought, oh, how interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So and I put a curriculum together and I went to the adult learning, at the high school in Harvard, Massachusetts, and said to them, hey, I want to try teaching this through, evening classes.
Yeah.
They went to the high school and said, okay, she wants to do this. And the male woodworking teacher said, not in my shop. And she said, well, public funds, you're a public teacher. This is a public space. Guess what? She gets to teach her class.
Oh, good for them. That's great.
So, which is great. So I went through a couple of rounds there before I moved. And then I taught over at the Keene High School in their evening classes while I was in New Hampshire and while I was transitioning, here into my own shop in Vermont.
Yeah.
So something really wonderful about the ripeness of women, like I was ripe I hadn't learned it. My brother got to use the tools growing up. I didn't, so it was, these women were like really wanting to learn, really wanting to find that part of themselves. Some of them had really beautiful stories. Their husbands passed away, had a shop. That was a way to stay connected to the memory of their beautiful marriage, just to learn what he was doing down in the basement or in the garage all those years. These lovely stories come out. And it's just really wonderful working with women. They're really teamwork people, they want to help each other.
Yeah.
And the energy.
You also did a summer camp for, was it for kids?
I did. So this is through the Career Center
Oh,
at Brattleboro.
uh-huh.
For 4 years, they were hosting there a summer day camp for girls called Rosie's Girls.
Uh-huh.
They're sort of out of the Vermont Works for Women, which is a trades organization and support women getting back into the workforce, in non-traditional trades. And so this was about working with girls 10 to 14 years old to look at non-traditional choices in life, to look at media input and how women, girls are, what does media do to us? What are they nudging us towards? And how does that affect our self-esteem and our choices in life? And it was really a wonderful program. And so the girls got to explore those things and try out some different non-traditional things. And I was the main, they got to build stuff and go install stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really a wonderful program. And Hatchspace wants to have some kids programs too, which is really exciting.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, let's talk about Hatchspace a little bit, because this is well, it's not new in town anymore. Hatchspace was started, gosh, I can't remember how many years ago, probably about 4 years ago. Tom Bodette and Greg
Goodman
started it, and it's actually kind of a collective, a nonprofit collective of different people doing different types of woodwork. And you can talk about that much better than I can. And also the fact that you're in the middle of moving. Hatchspace is moving.
Just got into the new building April 1st. So yeah, so it's chaotic over there right now. I've been going down to help, arrange teaching spaces and things. They came after me about, I was on my last year-long travel thing. They came after me, instructor, because they had kept hearing about my name, teaching women in the community, and that's where people sort of know my name. And so it, as we explored my teaching there from the road, basically, it felt like a win-win. I was heading towards retiring from my business anyways. I felt like I was, traveling more and working part-time when I was here and doing a little teaching. And so to move my teaching to a collective like that made a lot of sense. It's still in the community. It's got support. There are other instructors there. I'm usually doing everything alone, in my own space. So, and then I could get my machines out. I can do what I'm doing now, which is turning my wood shop into an apartment that I will be living in. House out. So Hatchspace is, we keep sort of shifting the mission a little bit, but we are a collective of members to use the space, to come together, to share the machinery. We're also an educational facility. We're also a school. And our mission is to reach out into the community and to offer what the community needs from us, beginning classes, maybe more advanced classes for those people who are very serious about it. People might through be able to use this facility to help in their business aspect of things. We're going to have a gallery so things can be sold, that people make. People can be inspired to learn how to do some of this stuff. So it's pretty exciting, and the people are great. Tom and Greg are just fabulous. They're very different, and they're both fabulous in their own rights. Those are visionary, and Greg is like got the grounded thing. Oh, okay, let's ground ourselves here.
And you've got a wonderful collective of people too, and I assume that will sort of probably shift and change over the years, perhaps.
Yes, and we have some younger people coming in to teach some classes, right? And we're trying to really bring in some guest instructors as well. Because I will continue to do some traveling, and so I just said to Tom recently, you can't have me 5 days a week. 12 months a year, every single day. So.
And I hear that you're also looking at things like upholstery, like someone who could teach
Yeah.
upholstery and sort of like adjunct things that are getting to be very popular these days, something different.
Yeah, there's a lot of do-it-yourself stuff going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
So the biggest vision is that Hatchbase is one part of a homemaker community.
Yeah.
So all kinds, I know that other local groups are thinking about renting space in the building as well, who are creative makers of different kinds. So
Right.
to have collaborative too is going to be really exciting. I'm also connected to the Claremont Makerspace in Claremont, New Hampshire,
Uh-huh.
and are a much more full makerspace. So they have a welding and industrial sewing machines and jewelry making and, wood shop and all kinds of things. So I think that ideally Hatchbase is heading in the direction with that new building.
It's a very exciting new direction, and I know that makers and places for making are popping up all over the country. So it's great we've got something big in town. And you guys used to be on Frost Street, and the new location is the old Griswold building, which folks know on High Street,
Right.
just a block up High Street. So it's that great big building that's
Yeah.
that's had various things in it over the years.
And the wheelhouse is in there for pottery.
Yeah.
And so already a good essential
It's a
place.
good, you've got a lot of basic things going on there already. It's a big building. It's,
Life story.
so you have referred a couple times to traveling. So let's jump into your nomadic traveling, which started in 2014 for you.
It did. That's when I finished my house.
Ah,
My house. I went through another relationship breakup, and I thought I just need a sabbatical. I just need to take a breath, take a break from all this work, all this stuff.
mhm.
And a good friend who's a nomadic traveler. Actually, he never had a career. He's just worked 6 months out of the year doing anything he could to fund his traveling for the other 6 months,
Nice.
and he traveled very cheaply and very, very creatively around the world, mostly hitchhiking and just wants to meet the people. So I went to travel with him in New Zealand in 2010 for a month, and we hitchhiked around New Zealand. And I got to travel the way he traveled. I learned some things, and I thought, I can do this. I can do this creatively and cheaply. So in 2014, I called the local property manager and said, would someone rent my house for 1 year only? Are people even doing that? And what could I get for it? And could I travel on that amount of money?
Uh-huh.
And like, yeah, absolutely. People are looking for all kinds of situations. So he found me some renters, and I wasn't trusting my vehicle to drive, so I got on a Greyhound bus out of Bellows Falls with 4 packs on me, bags. And I thought, okay, I've already been doing some couch surfing through a couch surfing network, so I already had some people I knew around the country that I had hosted here in Vermont. So I thought, start with them. So I have friends in Roanoke, Virginia. I thought I'll couch surf with them now. They've stayed with me. I can stay with them. And there are hostels, youth hostels, and I have a tent with me. I'm a hiker and a backpacker. So I was carrying my full gear for backpacking, a couple of pairs of dancing shoes with me, just in case,
Yep.
and I headed off, and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I really stepped off to that bus thinking, what am I thinking? I mean, I have no idea what I'm doing. But it took a little while. I started with people I knew, and I headed down the eastern seaboard, and then once I felt like, okay, I got it. I got some rhythm going here. I just spent the rest of the year traveling around the country and having a lot of time to just, take any trajectory I wanted. And it was just nice to have that freedom to say,
Yeah.
oh, just invited me to go help him shear llamas in Nevada County, California, make some money. Why not?
Wow, you make it sound so attractive, Gail. It's really what a way to live, and what an amount of time to be able to take and to do the kinds of things like that. And I know that you also kept a blog during some of this time, at least. And I love, you know, it feels like you invite new experiences into your life, and I think that you refer to it as leaning into the wind, which I
Yes.
really love. Yeah, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think I grow, and I come to a very internal process where I grow best by learning new things and by challenging myself to try some new things. Doesn't mean I'm not, I don't have some fear around some things.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't have caution, but I try to do it with some degree of intelligence and some degree of, my my third trip, I tried some rappelling, some down a slot canyon in Utah. I am deathly afraid of heights. And I met a woman in near Zion National Park. I did some work exchange for her.
Uh-huh.
Trip, and I went back to see her, and she said, when you get out here, we're going to get you on the ropes. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't count on that one. But she was working for a guiding service, and she said, the head guide is going to take us on his day off. He's a friend. He's really good. He'll keep you safe. It's going to be a beginner slot canyon. I thought, okay, a beginner slot canyon. I still got some heights,
Oh,
but
you're brave. You're so brave.
Fabulous. It was really fabulous, and I felt like I had a really good crew. And
Oh, wonderful.
I would do it. So these are the kinds of things that I think are important for me to challenge myself to get past just my small little container of who I've been. Who can I be if I open up a little bit?
Well, the stories that you're telling, you have definitely widened that container by manyfold. And along the way, you talked about stopping and being able to dance, different kinds of dancing in different places. But you're writing about the travels now. Is that right?
I am. So I learned how to write through the blog, through the blogging process. That way people could understand where, my friends and family could see where I was. And it was a journal of some kind I was keeping. And then people said, I love your writing. I love how you're writing, what you're writing about. You should write a book. People always say, you should write a book.
Right.
And, well, what would that be if I wrote a book? So I'm working on a book manuscript right now about my first year on the road. A lot of Greyhound, it sounds romantic in a lot of ways, but there were a lot of grueling times too. I had to let go of a lot of agenda, from buses being late to not being able to get to where I wanted to get to thinking, oh no, where am I going to stay when I get off that bus? I'm taking my blog posts basically and revising them after a story about the year.
That sounds really wonderful. And so this past year, it's been a pandemic. You've been in Westminster West during this time. And how's that been for you? Because I think you were about to plan another trip.
Oh, absolutely. Always about to plan another trip. I'm planning another trip. So the brakes got, put on. I was down in Louisiana and Texas over the winter of 2020. And so, the pandemic hit down there. I was going to go back to Austin to do some honky tonk dancing. And my friend said, oh no, there's this whole COVID thing started happening. And the South by Southwest Festival, which was coming up, was going to be canceled for the first time in 40 years. And I thought, this is big. To book it right back to Vermont and just be where I knew, it's going to be safer here. So, and it made sense in a weird way. It pushed me into making the apartment happen out of my wood shop. I was already having that in my mind. I was already started that process, but having not being able to go out anywhere really to lock down, it made sense to just focus on that project and just do it. So it's been a lot of work over the last year, but I'm there. I made it to the end of that pretty much.
You did. I know. It's great. You've had these visions and you followed through with them, and they've manifested, right, and actualized.
June 20th, I've got some reservations up at Baxter State Park in Maine to do some backpacking and hiking up there for a few weeks, and then I'm going to drive out to Utah and Colorado and meet up with my Zion friend, and I'll be back in September. So it'll be a mini road trip. And then hoping that next winter things will feel safe enough to go south again to dance. Right now, I'm just watching them down there going, oh, I don't know,
Right. Yes. It might be a little early. Well, Gail, this was great. This is fun. And all of the things that you're doing, and it's going to be a whole new venture when you get back from that, and Hatch Space will have settled in a bit. So we'll all be in touch. I'm sure we'll see you around town on various flyers for teaching again.
Absolutely.
Happy trails to you.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks so much for being with us today and telling your stories. We traveled a lot in this show.
A lot of ground. Yeah.
Thank you, Gail. And thanks to all of you for joining us once again. This was a road trip while we can sit in our chairs and watch it from our laptops or our living rooms. So thanks for being with us. We will be back next week. We will have someone new on from the community. Stay tuned, stay with us, stay safe.